discretion is advised.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the New to Wrestling podcast After Dark. It's been a minute
It
since we've done
has
an
been a
After
minute.
Dark. First of all, we just had like the realest life chats. So
No,
funny. We were
honestly.
we were supposed to start recording at probably like 8 o'clock, and it's almost 10 because we were just cutting it up. And guys, I just want to say friendship is so magical and important. And I was actually late to this train. I'm so happy to be on board now, but
Love
friendship
that.
friendship is actually like kind of the shit.
Kind of
So
the shit.
kind of shit. Another announcement. I just want to like say that we now that Raw has switched to Netflix, because the reason we're doing this after dark
Now, yeah.
in lieu of a normal episode is now that Raw has switched to Netflix, we did talk about this, but there are some holes in episodes, like episodes are just missing. So while we are in the process of figuring out how to bootleg an episode, or we potentially might just have to summarize it and talk about something like the next
Right.
episode, while
Give us a
we
little space while we
yes,
figure out the
adjust.
logistics of the show
Yes.
for the next little bit. Just because we didn't really know, nobody really knew what the transition was going to look like.
Right.
So we kind of just had to wait till it happened to be like, okay, like this is what we have. So I'm scouring the internet for whatever I can find as far as like full episodes that we're missing. And we'll get there. So just bear with us. And for
Yes.
the time being, we're going to talk about Brian Pillman.
Yes, we're going to talk about we watched part 1 and 2 of Dark Side of the Ring. It's season 3, episodes 1 and 2. I also will say it's a new year. It's after dark. We are going to do things, I think, structurally a little different with After Dark. I think when Xavier passed me the baton for After Dark, I was filled with dread and anxiety because, not dread, but anxiety because, as you all know, I'm new to wrestling and I was so nervous that I was going to mess things up. And so I would take like an hour-long episode of something. I would watch it for 4 hours because I would pause and write like every single thing somebody said,
Mhm.
every single date, detail, whatever, because I just wanted to do the thing right, quote
Hmm.
unquote. I was so nervous to mess it up. But I'm releasing that and we're just gonna what After Dark was intended to be and more like a chit chat. We're hanging out, we're
Hmm.
talking about things that we saw. So it's not gonna be as like intensive. I'm reading verbatim word for word the entire documentary of something. We're gonna
Right.
loosen up and relax.
Yeah, the
And
documentary is on Hulu if you want to watch.
yes, yes.
And or Disney Plus if you have the bundle, whatever floats your
If the
boat.
bunzel, if you're bunzling girl. So yeah, like so bear with us if things are we miss things, whatever, sound off in the comments what your favorite parts were, what you want to talk about,
Your
whatever.
takeaway from Brian Pillman's
Yes.
existence,
But,
time in wrestling, anything.
but we're gonna keep it a little looser. So just let's everyone just relax.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Everybody shake it out. Take a second
you
while
know,
you're wherever if you're in the car, one hand on the wheel. If you're at home, just get up from wherever you are, give it a quick shimmy, give it a little shake. How you doing?
yes. Hi,
Um,
how you doing?
um,
Yeah, get your coffees, get your teas, get your water. Let's hang out and let's just chit chat as God intended. As God
Amen.
intended. So yes, we watched Dark Side of the Ring. I'm so glad that we did because I knew literally nothing about Brian Pillman at all except for this brief stint in Raw. Yes, WWE on Raw when he came
Correct.
back after his car accident.
Right. So you were really getting the like tail end. And I had
Oh,
like made like during the show I like made mention I was like you're not getting the
the
full
effects.
Brian Pillman like experience, especially in the ring. And we can go back and dive into some
Watch.
of his like earlier stuff, like the stuff with Steve Austin and just yeah.
I would
His
love
time in
that.
WCW and ECW. But uh yeah, the
Because
when we started watching when the show started, as some of you know, it was 1996, which is pretty much around the time that he gets signed. So
And like
we
almost exactly a year before he died,
right.
too, I think.
So
And yeah, because I think if I had seen Brian Pillman from the rip, I would have loved his character. Because even
right.
just like his the way he ends up like playing Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff and like going to ECW, I'm like, this is all shit that I usually like
Right,
really
eat
eat
up.
up. And I would like formally apologize because normally I rip Brian Pillman to shreds and get so irritated by his behavior, but I think I just didn't
Understand
understand. And
where this came
that's
from.
my
Yeah.
bad.
But
That's
it's
my
also
bad.
you didn't have the context of the
The
last
context. Yes.
because again, new to wrestling.
Yes. Hashtag new to wrestling. Hey. So, Stone Cold is obviously in this episode because they originally were tag team partners as the Hollywood Blondes. And the episode opens with Stone Cold saying he doesn't really, and this makes sense to me. Stone Cold's like, I don't really like keep a lot of things. I'm not like a
Sentimental.
sentimental guy. Make total sense. But he's like, this gold chain from when like Brian Pillman gifted me from when we were the Hollywood Blondes, like I still have and I really cherish it. And so he still has this like just a very simple, I mean, if you live in North Jersey where I live, girl, that's the standard uniform. The gold
Hmm.
chain, the gold chain is the
Absolutely.
standard uniform. Rise up. So I was like, love to see it. But there we have JR, we have Jim Cornette with his little dog. That
Hmm.
turned me out, that little Pomeranian with the
Oh my
bows.
God, I know.
Jim, what is that? So
Tell me more,
unexpected.
honestly.
Years. We have Brian Pillman Jr., who
Hmm.
is adorable.
Yes, he now wrestles in.
AEW, right?
He
Or no?
started there. He now
Okay.
wrestles in WWE in NXT. They're like
Oh, okay.
quote unquote developmental, like third show. And that whole all of NXT, the creative director is Shawn Michaels. Fun
Oh,
facts.
that's right. Oh my God,
Yeah.
yes, we've talked about this
Hmm.
before.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
so
yeah.
fierce.
Hmm.
Love that.
So that's where he is now, Brian Pillman Jr. But we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and all anyone can say about him is like he was actually really amazing on the mic. That was something that pretty much everyone brought up was like he was a really great talker. And I think Stone Cold mentions at some point in the documentary that he would be driving with Brian Pillman in the car and Brian Pillman would be sitting in the passenger seat reading a dictionary
Yeah.
because he wanted more words,
Vocab. He wanted
better
a better
words.
vocab. Yeah. Love
I
that.
love that. I
That's
was like,
very
that
like
is
Eminem of him.
yes. Oh my
Because
God,
Eminem does
so
the same
real.
thing. Like Eminem just like
Yes.
reads the dictionary, like just for fun.
That
Like
is
so that
so
he would have more
fierce.
words to use. And I love that.
I I love that. I have to do it in because I also love words, but I have to do it in the context of like books. Like I love to read
Same.
books to get words because I like them in context.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
ooh, and then maybe
Same.
I'll look it up, but I love that you people who can just flat out read the dictionary, girl, that's
Love
a
that.
skill.
No, very much so. And that's like it's the reason like not like the reason I read, it's the reason I tell people I read is because I want to be able to eviscerate people with words that they don't understand.
Yes, I want to eviscerate people so with literally they don't even know they were eviscerated.
No,
Their organs are just
100%.
on the
We
floor.
had a what did he teach? Like biology, like I
Mr.
had an
Willer?
yes.
Yes!
We had a
He was
teacher
so skilled at this.
who like that was his like bread and butter where he would like fully be insulting like some of the less let's just say some of the duller knives in the drawer and they just had no idea like just right over their head just whoop and
And
I live for that.
let me say he never insulted a duller knife in the drawer who wasn't a loudmouth. Like who
Correct.
wasn't
Trying to like disrupt the class like who wasn't trying to
yes.
like derail.
He wouldn't put anyone down for not understanding something. It was like if you were like loud, obnoxious, whatever, and you were a dull knife, Miss Girl, get ready to get red. It
100%
it
and
was
or
a
a shot
clinic.
with the air cannon.
Oh, period. Oh my
That
God.
giant air cannon like this man kept in his like whatever closet or
Yes.
cabinet that was in his room.
Yes.
Crazy.
Shout out Mr. Willer. We
No,
really do
honestly.
discuss him a lot because he
Way
was
more frequently than like most of the teachers. But it's fine.
because he was that good. I'm not overhyping it. He was
No.
that good at reading the girls, getting
No,
them
100%.
together.
And he also kind of sounded like that guy from the Visine commercials, like the old ones. He's like dry eyes. Like, you know?
He had that voice. Oh my
Yeah,
God, you're
he was
so
like a little
right.
bit monotone, but because it was so like like because he was so sardonic, it was perfect. Like
Yes.
it wouldn't have made any sense otherwise
That
for his voice to
dry.
sound any other way. Yeah.
Oh, period. Amazing. Speaking of voices, this is
Oh
actually a
yeah.
great transition. So Brian Pillman, we learned from his sister Linda, who I
Queen.
loved. I will
Queen.
get into it, but Miss Linda, there's always a star of every After Dark,
No,
and
honestly.
it is Linda Pillman, girl. I
No.
wish her nothing but the best things in life. I could
100%.
literally cry thinking about her. What an angel sent from God, if I believed in such a thing.
Correct.
Um, but Linda tells us that Brian was born with polyps on his vocal cords, and he would have to get them like scraped because they would constrict his airway. And but they would grow back. Like every once in a while they would start just growing back. So he'd constantly have to get his vocal cords scraped, and that lended itself to the reason he has such a raspy voice, which is
Hmm.
crazy. Like I don't know if that's like a they didn't really explain why, and maybe they don't know why. Is that like a genetic anomaly? It's just like a weird freak thing. Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, it made me think of, which is horrible, but it made me think of Pitch Perfect when is it Brittany Mer? And she's like, I have nodes. And
Oh
everyone's
yeah,
like,
Brittany Snow or
oh,
whatever.
Brittany Snow, thank
I
you.
have nodes. And everyone
Like
like
she's
hits
like,
the
I've been
deck.
keeping this secret. I have nodes. Horrible.
It's so funny.
Um, but he had over 40 surgeries on his vocal cords alone, like in his
Right.
life.
Hmm.
Crazy. That's insane. And they talked about an experience he had where they gave him an emergency tracheotomy at a doctor's house. Like I guess like their mother came home, Brian was like in bed and he was wheezing so badly that like the mother called a doctor and held the phone up to him and was like, bring him to my house immediately because I'm actually close in the hospital and he like won't make it. And
Right.
did an emergency tracheotomy in his dining room.
Right. That is some like on the
That's
battlefield
some
type shit. Like what is
yes,
that?
that is some Molly Pitcher like what is
Crazy. Crazy.
Grey's Anatomy, like
Mm-mm.
Chicago Fire, like I don't know, like
Right. It
craziness.
that does not happen.
Seems
That's
fake.
crazy.
Yeah, sounds fake. I don't know. We also meet oh, and Linda says even though he had all those surgeries and this like lends itself to his lore later on, but his like difficulty breathing, the fact that he got like a tracheotomy, like all this stuff never stopped him from being very active. He still loved to play and run. He was always going. She was like, he was always like climbing, running, jumping, bouncing,
Hmm.
like all over the place. He was very active
Very
no matter what.
hyperactive
Yes,
and will
we
remain that
know
way.
her. Yes,
Yeah.
we know her. We also meet Kim Wood. This man, I would say,
Fantastic.
yes, second, probably my second favorite person in this
Hmm.
episode. He is a former NFL strength coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. So he was the strength coach when Brian Pillman went to
Was on the
was
Bengals. Yeah.
on the Cincinnati Bengals. And apparently when he was in Cincinnati, he had a reputation for being a street fighter. Like he was brawling the girlies at the club. He was hanging them by their ankles over the balcony. He was like fighting, like banned
Right.
from bars. He was just beefing all that. So
So
again,
this it
like,
gives to me like in the same vein that like my father was always fighting growing up, it just gives like Napoleon complex, like
mm,
just like I'm little so I gotta fight, and it's like
yes,
which is honestly sometimes the way of life, especially like back then when bullying was just like everywhere.
rampant.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I'm sure like it probably was the case, like I'm little, I gotta fight. Like so
Yes. And it's funny you say that because I think his son says, my dad always said, and this is classic, like little dog in a big dog room is like, it doesn't matter about the size of the dog in the fight, it's about the size of the fight and the dog.
yeah.
And I was
Hmm.
like, that is classic Napoleon complex shit to
No,
say.
100%. No, 100%.
But I mean, period. And I think that it worked itself into his work ethic. Like he
Hmm.
really like pushed himself, which isn't always a good thing, as we'll learn. And we've learned time and time again with wrestlers. But he suffers an ankle injury that ends his football career, and he didn't know what to do. And at the time he wasn't on the Bengals anymore. He was playing in the Canadian Football League or something,
Yes.
and happened to be this is so serendipitous, happened to be in Calgary,
Right.
which as we know, is where the Heart Dungeon is.
Hmm.
And so Kim Wood was actually the one that suggested that Brian go check out this like Stu Hart guy. Sounds like he's got something going on up there. Could you imagine?
Right.
Just go pop over to the Hart dungeon.
Well, yes, because Stu was also, I don't know if he was still during this time, but he was like the the promoter for I think it was Stampede Wrestling in Calgary.
Oh
So there was
yes.
also, it wasn't
Yes.
like the there was the Hart Dungeon, which was in the Hart family's home. But there
Yes.
was also a like promotion that he was running.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so Linda said, because I guess like the interviewer asked her what she knew about like the those years where Brian was at in the Heart Dungeon, and she said, from what I hear, if you didn't hear screaming coming out, then something was not going right.
Hart, yeah,
Crazy.
that's like it's very that done. It's notorious, basically.
It
Like it
ha
was
it had me start like think a little bit. It like made my brain think a little bit more about like the Hart family, like Bret Hart and Owen Hart, and like what pressure and insanity that must have been when that's especially your own father like coaching you, and like
right.
the excellence that demands. Like I was like,
Hmm.
I was like, I could
And you know
psychoanalyze
what's
that
crazy?
later.
It's like his they're like in we've even seen it like throughout, the show. It's like Stu comes to like a lot of the shows.
Yes,
Like he's
I would
he's
die.
still watching. You know what I mean? Like still watching, probably critiquing. Like it's that's isn't that crazy? It's just
That's really scary.
like
Because, well, it's like a small tidbit of that is like when we do the show, I love the show. I never expect anyone in my family to like partake. And
right.
there was one time my mom and I were FaceTiming, and hi Jean. And she was like, I just like love you and Xavier. I love the dynamic you have going on, blah, blah. And I was like, are you watching the show? I'm gonna die. I was like, I am disgusting on this show. And like I didn't say it at first. I was like, oh my God, that is really nice, la la. And then I hung up and I was like, the last clip we put out was about eating ass. I was like, was
So
that what she
funny.
was talking about?
So funny.
Terrifying. So I can't imagine. And she's not like demanding excellence from me. Like she was just like saying it. But even just the fact that she might be watching,
She was paying attention. I was like, what?
I was
Yeah.
like, suddenly she's in the room. And so I
Suddenly
can't.
I'm fucking 12 and I need to like and like I need to like get an A on something. You know
I'm
what I mean?
I need to get home before curfew. Like
Right.
I'm
I'm
frightened.
stressed, I'm sweating, like I'm gonna get in
So
trouble.
I can't imagine like Stu Hart, who is in wrestling, watching you wrestle, like
After
taught you wrestle. No,
yeah.
I would die. I would die. So
But that's
really,
like the excellence that like, he like produces is like those wrestlers by the time they got done like could just go. And when you even just look at the people who like came out of the dungeon,
like unbelievable.
you're like Lance Storm, like obviously Brett and Owen and all of the other ones, Chris Benoit, regardless of how you
Diva.
feel about him, the
I
man could
mean,
go in the ring. Um
yes.
like just people who came out of there could just go. Like flat out wrestle. So
Yeah,
it's like
wrestle.
wrestle. So
Yeah, Kimwood said something about how Stu Hart would put them in submissions for hours. Like
mhm,
they'd have to sit in a submission for like 2 hours. And so then
mhm.
but that's fierce because, well, not at the time, I'm sure, but like when you are in practical application,
Right.
put me in a submission, put me in the sharpshooter. You can put me in the sharpshooter for 45 minutes. I don't even care. It's not even
Yeah.
bothering me. I'm resting.
My uncle's a professional hockey coach, and he always goes, "You make practice harder than the game, so that when the game comes, it's easy."
Come on, Lee. Right, Lee?
Lee, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
assuming. Yeah, I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
come on, Lee. Hi, Lee.
yeah. So funny.
That's fierce. I mean, that makes sense. We also have Dave Meltzer in this episode, who's in most episodes. He's randomly, sidebar, extremely ripped in this episode. He was like wearing like a tight little t-shirt and like just I was like, where did this come from? Was he
Uh,
always like this and I just never noticed?
yeah, I feel like it. Like, I think so.
I mean, go off, Dave. I mean, Dave to me at this point is like such an authority on, and like everyone can feel how they feel about him, and
Mhm.
whatever, but
I
like
think it's
he's such
more
like
in
an
like,
authority.
especially on, well, one, he's a fantastic like historian. I think
Yes.
people now probably take his word with a little bit like of a grain of salt. Um,
which is
in
fair.
that he is less like um he's not as like
Tapped in,
connected as he was during this time.
of
Like
course.
like even in this documentary, like he was like
In
in the
it.
know, like in the know, knew the
Yes.
wrestlers. And I'm not saying he doesn't to a certain extent now. I just think it's probably less so. Um,
Yeah.
and now there are just so many more people that do what he does. There's just
And
more.
I think the game has changed because then it was like print media. Like
Right,
so you had to like someone had to call and tell you. It's not like you like saw a picture on Instagram and like
right,
the nature of the game has also changed.
right.
But yeah, when I say like he's the authority, it's just like I just feel like he knows everything
Yeah,
about wrestling from this time because
right.
again, like
No, very
he
much so.
was.
He
Yeah.
is a really good
He
historian.
he gave like he was the Chris Jenner at the time. And like he didn't have his own kids, but he was like always people were always like chirping in his ear and he was like spinning some
Hmm.
certain
Right,
webs.
right, right.
But I guess Brian had sent his own tapes to Dave Meltzer, and so Dave Meltzer started writing about him. JR sees Dave Meltzer writing about him, and JR says, you know, Dave was like he was really good. He had an eye for talent at that
Right.
time. Like he was
Hmm.
pretty good at like
Figuring
figuring
out
out
like who people were like on the
what
pulse
time it
of, who
was.
they were reacting to, like yeah,
Yes. So he's like, so I asked if we could bring him into WCW. And it's so
yes.
funny because JR, like, like he does bring like a lot of the goodies like to
Yeah, he
his
that's kind of his like
organizations.
his one a couple of things about JR. JR's always done like has always played like multiple roles. Um
Yes.
and so like while we're seeing him every Monday on Raw, he is also an executive. Like he's also like he has a while he's traveling every week to do these shows, he also he has an office in Connecticut where he works the rest of the week. And
That is
like I was
crazy.
like he's the one responsible for bringing in Stone Cold, The Rock, Chris Jericho. Like he's the one
Girl.
who did that. And a lot of this like the people that um WCW really didn't see value in um and ended up like releasing over the years were people that like JR brought in and then was like, okay, you don't want them, we'll take them.
And I love
Because
that.
if anybody had an eye for talent, it's JR.
And I'll die on that hill, girl. You cannot deny the
Especially
record.
during this time. I think wrestling
Period.
has changed a lot, and
Yes.
I think JR nowadays, kind of falls into the trap that a lot of old like just happens. He's a little bit more set in his ways in
Of
certain things.
course. Yeah.
Um, so, but during this time, that man was plugged into the Matrix. Let me tell you.
Plugged in diva. Yeah, 100%. So Ric Flair apparently takes like kind of a liking to Brian Pillman. They have a match together that goes over really well. And they kind of become friends and start hanging out. And allegedly Brian Pillman just gets very attracted to the Ric Flair lifestyle. I mean, honestly, girl, who wouldn't? I would be the cars, the robes, the girls, the like I
Yeah.
would be I get it.
Yeah,
I
the
get why
limousine
it's
ride and profiling. Yeah, yeah,
styling
yeah.
profiling
Ride
diva.
in
Like,
Space Mountain. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, you haven't seen that promo, I don't think. Um,
no.
oh, there's like a oh god,
Please.
there's some promo where he's essentially referring to his genitalia as Space Mountain and how everyone gets a ride. Yeah. It's
No
it's really fun.
way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I have to look this up because I want like and I know there has to be one on YouTube University, like Ric Flair's best promos or
Oh,
like
oh, baby. Yes. Oh,
okay,
yes.
viewers. Okay, me doing this immediately after we're done. But so he gets attracted to the Ric Flair lifestyle, duh. And word on the street is he's quite the ladies' man, and I think that tracks with the different mothers he has for his variety of children.
Correct.
No tea, no shade, love to the children, because
Right.
honestly, they were like also some of the we were talking about this before we started, but like wow, God bless these kids. I mean, holy shit, the things that they went through.
Right.
Um, but we first meet Brittany Pillman, and her mother was a woman named Rochelle.
Right.
They her I don't know if she and Brian were ever married. I think they were just together for a really long time and they lived together. I don't remember if they were ever actually on paper married. I
Got it.
don't think so.
Hmm.
But either way, they have Brittany. And Brian thought for the longest time that was his eldest and only child. And then when Brittany was about a year old, he finds out that he has another daughter named Danielle who goes by Danny. And then suddenly Danny Pillman was his eldest child. He had two daughters with like two different women within a year of each other. Just out the blue from like a
Hmm.
very brief love affair. The woman was not in the documentary, and I don't think they gave like named her. I don't think she wanted to be a part of it, which is fine. But Danny says that Brian wanted her in his life immediately, like immediately accepted her. It wasn't that
Hmm.
he knew and ignored. He literally didn't know. And then when he
Right.
knew, he was like, "Oh hell yeah, now I have two kids." Like he loved
Hmm.
his children.
Right.
He just had a
Vices.
bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he had a bunch. Um, this was really crazy and took such a random turn, but I guess they mentioned this because they wanted to talk about the fact that Rochelle, Brian's partner at the time, and Brittany's mother had a lot of mental health problems, but they talk about how like, she was alone a lot because Brian was wrestling, and basically what happened is she was home and they were living in a condo at the time, and the groundskeeper at the condo just breaks into the house and stabs her with an ice pick
Repeatedly
repeatedly in the
in the
face.
face.
In the face. And Linda's like, and that'll mess up anybody.
Hmm.
What?
Right.
And they never explain it. They like go like for all intents and purposes, like go to commercial. Like if it
Yeah.
was on TV, like they would have got, and I was like,
Oh,
wait,
we're
hello?
we're we're just leaving with stabbed in the face. Got it.
It stabbed in the face, that'll mess anybody up. Hello? I was
Right.
like, oh, so that I guess that's just like and again, they don't really explain it, like why he did it, what was the outcome, what happened, what
Right.
they
If
kind of
anybody
just,
knows, please let us know.
yeah, seriously, because God, that's horrible. But to just show she became, I guess, like very paranoid, she had like really severe mental health problems, and like again, like I would never feel safe again. That's insane.
Right.
Um, and for some reason they follow this up with introducing Eric Bischoff. Hey girl. So what?
I'm gonna wait. I'm just gonna
Okay.
wait. That man
Okay.
pisses me off.
Oh my God, so bad. And his head is just like a block. It just looks like a straight up
It's a
cube.
square, yeah.
Oh, it's horrible. Anyway.
Right, right, right. You kind of want to like plug your phone into charge.
Oh,
That's where that goes, right?
right in
Right.
his mouth. Okay.
Lord
Also,
knows it's
I wrote Eric Bischoff. Ew,
dude.
in my
The
notes. I'm
way
sorry.
the way this man is like such a spin doctor to just like make it seem like
Mama.
everything was his idea and he was in on everything. And I'm
Diva.
just like, dude, shut up.
This turned
Like
me
I've
out.
never seen like somebody so in love with the sound of their own fucking voice. Ugh. He makes me
Uh,
Jim Cornette, I agreed with everything you said on your rant.
Jimmy,
Everything.
Jim Cornette, you've made a believer out of me. I don't know what happened, how he got here, but you turned
Amen.
me. But he basically says like Brian's first few years in WCW were tough. And so somehow, whatever, they like put him together to tag with Steve Austin. Apparently, Steve Austin really didn't want to do it. He was like, I don't want to do that. I'm like solo dolo. Again, it's so on brand for him, like who he is
Right.
as a person. He's like, I don't want to tag team, like, ew. And
Hmm.
then he goes, but something happened. Like we did like the Hollywood Blondes, and it ended up really, really working for us. And he said, and Stone Cold is so cool because he was like, once I figured out like the art of tag teaming, I really enjoyed it. Like,
I Stone Cold is so low key eloquent.
yes. Okay, yes.
And like I live for
Yes.
that because he's
Live.
known as being this like loudmouth, redneck, like brash, like
Mm-hmm.
short fused, blah blah blah, television. And like you listen to him speak, and that is, very much who he is, turned up to
Yes.
11. But it's like you listen to him speak and you're like, you are surprising. Like the man's like pro like LGBT, like very well spoken, like really well read, just fucked off to like a farm with his cats. Like this man,
Feel I love
like
him so
he is
much.
really like, I love this man.
He's I
And
it's so
the
go
more I
ahead.
know him now, the more I love him. Like the more I
No, it's
see him
so
more,
true.
you're like I loved him then as a kid because he was cool. I love him now because it's like, oh, that's how I'm trying to be. Like I'm trying to fuck off and just live with my cat and like
No,
no problem.
period. No,
Like
me as hell. And it's one of those scenarios where it's like they say never meet your heroes, but I could meet him and feel like,
hmm
okay, you're still one of the best. And especially because I do sometimes watch his Broken Skull sessions. I don't watch a lot because, again, I don't want spoilers. And I started to watch Bret Hart's like 2 weeks ago, and he immediately cut to the chase with wanting to talk about the Montreal Screwjob. And I was like, no, 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 wait, wait, wait. I was like, I'll
hmm
come back, I'll come back. But when you watch that, it's so true because he is like he
Soon.
gets right to the chase, but he is so eloquent. He asks such good questions. And just
hmm
because like you're a speak first, ask questions later doesn't mean you don't think.
Right.
Like I think that's a common misconception where it's like speak first or whatever, like better to ask for forgiveness and permission
Right.
doesn't mean you're not thinking about stuff. Like
Right.
I could talk about this all day long, but we'll move on for now. But he said, the Hollywood Blondes is where he really learned to be, both of them really learned to be heels and like found out that they really enjoyed being heels and could really tap into that character of being heels. People love to hate the Hollywood Blondes. Um, and Jim Cornette says Brian was made to be a heel because he had that same like whip crack, like I just want to say anything, like very Stone Cold, like what Stone Cold ends up becoming. Like he had that
Bite.
tenacity,
Yeah.
that bite. Yes. Like I wanted to say like I don't remember what it is. It's like the uniqueness, the nerve, the talent, but I can never remember what C is for
Charisma.
charisma. He had the charisma, the uniqueness, the nerve, and the talent. But
Absolutely. Serving.
And um, but then we talk about Miss Melanie. Miss
Enter
I,
Miss Melanie.
Enter Miss Melanie, and I want to call her Felony Melanie, like Sweet Home Alabama, and I
Mm.
think it would be apropos, but
We don't know for sure.
we
Yeah.
don't know for sure. She was allegedly a Penthouse model. Brian saw her in Penthouse and was like, "I'm gonna marry that girl," and manifestation is real, I suppose. But he ends up having Brian Jr. with Melanie. At the time, he was still with Miss Rochelle,
hmm
living with her. And I guess a second pregnancy out of the relationship was the last straw because
R
that's two. Like
right.
Danny and now Brian. And so they split up respectfully. And apparently Brian proposes to Melanie like almost immediately after. Is like, okay, now that Miss
Right.
Girl's out of the way. They elope to Las Vegas. Melanie Pillman is looking different than she was. I'm not trying to be judgmental, but she obviously had, and as we'll come to find out, a very challenging life. She had a very challenging relationship with drugs, with alcohol, with all sorts of things, and it reflects in the way she looks now and the relationship she has with her children. No
hmm
tea, no shade to that, but uh I said I'm sorry, but Miss Diva, she's looking crazy is in my notes. But um, she said that Brian was the most intelligent man she'd ever met. He was my soulmate. And I wrote one of my notes says this man has a whole mess of kids. My God. Because somehow it's like they have Brian Jr. and I couldn't figure out if they had another child or she had a child from a previous
She
relationship.
had two from a
She had
previous.
two from a okay, yes. Because they didn't like they I feel like they mentioned it, but not
Yeah,
very
because there's the three that were Brian's, and then the two from the previous.
okay,
So five
here's
in total that we got in the interview.
Wow.
that she talks about.
Wild.
Yeah.
So, but either way, Brian loves the children. Everyone says like his whole life was about his kids. Like he was
Right.
just always surrounded by kids, loved
And I
kids.
love
Like
that. I
I
love
do
that so much. It's
too. I
like
do too.
for all your like problems or whatever, it gives me the same vibes of like Bam Bam, with just less like
Yes.
problems where it's just like at the end of the day, like all he wanted to do was like provide
Be
for his
with his
family. It
kids. Oh,
wasn't
it's
like like for all of his like antics and craziness and infidelity and whatever, like when it came to his kids, he's like, full stop, I
that
want to be
them's
a
my
good dad.
kids.
Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like the tone of this specific episode was not like he got lost in the sauce partying. It was
Mm-hmm.
like because obviously that is a thing for some of the wrestlers where they just love to like party too
Right.
hard.
It's the
But like,
lifestyle. Yeah, yeah.
yes, but this was more like he, again, like Bam Bam Bigelow, like a lot of other wrestlers too, where it's like you just are get addicted to drugs because you're trying to continue to go to provide for your family. Tale as old as time. But so the Hollywood Blondes don't pull the ratings in their first main event match up with Ric Flair, and obviously they're not willing to blame Ric Flair because it's Ric Flair.
Yeah, he's
And
like
so
the goat at this, you know.
yes. So the Hollywood Blondes take the heat for that, and they decide to split up the tag team. Stone Cold says it broke my heart, which is
Yeah. Because
so
it's like,
sweet.
yeah, because he was like, this is yeah, later in the episode, he's like, he's one of my best friends in wrestling. Like, and like
Yeah.
to this day, I love him. So,
And he was like, I feel like they just didn't give us the chance that we deserve. Like we were just like it was their first time main eventing. Like,
yeah,
but c'est la vie, the team breaks up. And then in Brian Pillman's personal life, things kind of like really take a turn because Melanie was apparently kind of a troublemaker, like a shit starter, pot stirrer, and was allegedly very jealous and would get mad at Brian or any of the kids for talking to Rochelle. And it was apparently very hard on Brittany because obviously Rochelle is her mother.
right,
And, Rochelle had really bad mental health problems. And there's one point where she disappears. Like she disappears for days. She was supposed to pick up Brittany, never did. They can't get in touch with her or whatever. And when she reappears, I guess Melanie puts into Brian's head that, and this is all allegedly
well, she said that
Melanie
was Brian's idea
to
to
say
file for custody.
to file for full custody. Um, yes. And then Melanie says many times she really regrets doing this, regrets how she behaved, regrets what happened, because then I guess they had Brittany at like the playground, like Brian and Melanie had all the kids at the playground. Rochelle pulled up, even though she was not supposed to, just to see her daughter. And she like, hugs her. This is what Brittany said. Like she ran to her and hugged her and Melanie comes after her and like accuses her of trying to kidnap Brittany.
Right.
So I don't, and Melanie also says, I don't think that's what she was trying to do. Like, I think that again, she also is like, I was kind of drama about it. Made a scene, filed kidnapping charges against her, and Rochelle having her child taken away from her, very little to live for, allegedly. Like, she ends up killing herself,
Right.
which is horrible
Right.
and just very sad. And again, Melanie says like over and over again, like, I really regret it. No one should ever like try and take a child from their mother. I don't know why I did it, whatever. But Brian is devastated by her death. He blames himself and also, I guess, blames Melanie, she says, and he paid for her whole funeral, which, no offense, I think is the least he could have done.
Correct.
But Brittany says Melanie is an evil person. She is literally the devil. I hope she lives forever in misery. She literally says something like, I said she reads her. Like she says something like, the reason awful people live for a really long time when you think they should have dropped dead ages ago from the drugs and the alcohol and the abuse is because they need to live as long as possible with the misery they've created. She said something like that, which
Mm-hmm.
was really crazy, but also I think fair for her to say.
Right. I mean, who is anybody gonna tell her otherwise? You know, it's
Period.
like
I
that's your story, baby.
Yeah, and again, she's the one that's like the most directly affected by it.
Correct.
Like crazy. So either way, Brian apparently wanted more money to support his five children, and Eric Bischoff says he couldn't give it. Kim Wood, his old strength coach, who encouraged him to get into wrestling, is the one that says, that business runs on attention, and so you need to create more attention to make more money. And I will say, Kimwood is saying that a lot of these things were his idea, and they very well might have been, but there's also no one there to disprove that he did or did not say it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
he's saying like a lot of shit was his idea, and it very well could have been, but also like Brian's not there to be like, well, I thought blah
Yeah.
blah blah. You know what I mean? So I was
Hmm.
like, I did take some of this with a grain of salt. Like, okay, I still loved him, thought he
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
fierce, but I was like, okay. Um, so this is when he decides to become the loose cannon, and he starts to go batshit crazy, just saying whatever, doing whatever. No one knows what he's gonna do. And the idea is to pit Vince and Eric against each other in almost like a bidding war for his talent because he is garnering so much attention. He had Bobby Heenan drop the F-bomb
On
uh
on air.
on air. He also calls somebody, I forget who, the
It's
Booker
Kevin
man.
Sullivan. Kevin Sullivan
Oh,
also,
yes. Yes.
yes. Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. Nancy
The
Benoit's first husband. Yeah.
first husband. Yes. Calls him the Booker man. And you could see him go like,
Wait,
did he just
what?
did he
Right.
just say
Because
that?
that was that's on par with like the curtain
The
call.
curtain call,
It's in the
kayfabe.
same vein. It's like it's breaking the like it's you're not protecting the business. When they say that they mean protecting like the secrets from fans. And
Yes.
like Brian was like, "Oh no, I'm just gonna throw it out there because then they're all gonna be like, ooh, what does he mean? What?
Yes. And so he started really blurring the lines. And like, like you said, people, especially at that time, people were so sensitive
Mm-hmm.
to exposing the business.
Mm-hmm.
So people legitimately thought he was going crazy. Like
Mm-hmm.
legitimately believe, I think this is so fierce. Like
Yeah.
legit thought he was losing his mind. Um, Jim Cornette says he could actually convince people he was insane, like including me. Like he actually fooled me for a while. Um, Kim suggests that Brian gets Bischoff to give him this is so fierce. He convinces Brian,
And this is
allegedly.
this is the part where Eric Bischoff like really like pisses me off, but continue.
Yes. Well, I knew it had to be this. So he basically, what Brian does is he tells Eric, you need to release me from my contract, and it needs to be on paper. So it seems like you fired me, and it has
For
to be
like a
legit
storyline. Yeah.
for a storyline, because then I'll come in after you fired me, quote unquote, and really cause a ruckus. And people be like, what? No, what's he doing here? But to make it legit and have people actually believe it, you need to actually release me from my contract. And Kim is like, and that stupid bitch bought it and literally released him from his contract. Like, so crazy. Though he getting the work on Eric Bischoff, I'm just like,
I live for it. I live for it. Just for him to turn around like years later to be like, no, like I was in on the plan. Like I'm Eric Bischoff and nothing gets shut up.
girl,
Girl, you got
you
played.
got played like a fiddle bitch. Come
Just
on, it's
admit
Fiddler
it.
on the Roof,
Let,
girl.
let's let's be a
Okay,
man and accept our shortcomings. It's
honey,
okay. Our
it's
shortcomings,
oh boo boo.
according to Jim Cornette.
Ugh.
What?
What?
What? According to
Does
Jim
he
Cornette?
say that?
Oh, well, in the rant, he was like, he was calling him like
Oh, that's right.
little.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I thought like he act, but he did.
Not in
He
this
did.
episode. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was
No,
like,
just no, 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 no. In a recent clip, we mashed together a rant that Jim Cornette did on
oh yeah. Oh my little dick mister, little dick bitch. Fierce.
yo, for real.
Um, yeah, and I literally wrote moron LMAO
Hmm.
because I was like, that is so
That's
funny.
crazy.
So it frees him to negotiate with WWE, which is so funny. I literally wrote brilliant. And I said, Bischoff says he knew or whatever, but okay, Jan. Like, there's no,
Literally.
you are so fake, bit. Like, because to me, it's realer, it's cooler, and it's funnier if you just say, yeah, he got me, girl.
Hmm.
I would respect the out of you if you just said, and guess what? He got me, and it was brilliant, and like, can't believe that happened. Like,
Right.
my
Right.
opinion would immediately change for you because that's real as hell. Like,
Right. No, but this is par for the course.
he was like, everyone thinks that
Ta-
I didn't know.
just taking credit for, everything, regardless of how much actual influence he had on the situation. But yeah.
Sure. So, but it's so funny, which I think this is even better, is that instead of even, he is open for negotiating with WWE, but goes to ECW. Is like, I'm just gonna go to ECW. And that's
Hmm.
where he announces that he was fired from WW or WCW.
Hmm.
Fierce.
Yeah.
I love that instead of just going right to WWE, he was like, let me just go over to
Because,
the bingo
and he
hall and
knows,
see what
like,
he is.
he knows Vince pays attention to ECW. Like, and he does.
Oh,
And he does because we know because they bring them in. Like,
he plucks from ECW like
oh,
I can't even
don't
believe.
wait till like 98, 99.
Oh yeah, the whole roster. Everyone's coming over. And also I think it's brilliant because that's when he can really, really like
Go off.
let yes,
There are no guardrails in ECW, as we know.
girly, like he can really go crazy as the loose cannon and make his product like even more desirable. It's so smart. It's
Hmm.
so smart. Like I cannot believe I like did not I just slept
Hmm.
slept on Miss Bryan. Um and he does like he goes ballistic just like all over the wrestling business. He just goes crazy. Like there was this I thought was so amazing. He to protest not getting good matches, he wrestles with a pencil
Like a
and
giant
a
pencil.
giant pencil because a pencil is an insider name for a booker. And there's this he is like wrestling with his pencil and he just stops, looks at the camera and goes, I always end up fighting with the pencil. I always end up fighting with the I
So good.
love
It's so
shit like
good.
this. I love shit like this. I love it because if you don't know, you're like, this is so silly. And it's still funny and entertaining. But if you know, you're like,
Right.
this is so, I love this so much. Um, so an interviewer, this was my favorite part of the whole thing. An interviewer asks Kim Wood what his opinion of Vince McMahon was at the time. And he goes, you know what you do with a whore? You fuck them.
So good.
Diva,
So good.
take a bow, sir.
I was like, oh,
And the way he went, like, he was literally like, if he had hair, he would have been like this. He was like,
yeah,
he looks around, he goes, do you know what you do with a whore? You fuck them.
right. Oh, it was so good.
Let's
And
go.
like it's just like knowing what we know today, like could not just be more accurate. Like just could not be a better thing to say. It's just absolutely.
Hot.
Mm-hmm.
Kim, I love when because again, we know what we know now about Vince, but when we get to talk to the people who knew then and they let you know that they knew then, I love to
Mm-hmm.
hear from those people. I love to hear
Yes.
from those people.
Right.
Because
Because people love to be like, I was right. And they be coming out now. I
and
love
when
it.
you're right about someone who was heinous, let's go. Like nothing better.
Amen.
Nothing better.
Amen.
Um but I said I live, give this man the Pulitzer. Um so then Brian basically ends up like ambushing Vince and JR at some like wrestling convention in Las Vegas that was just meant for like the upper echelon of like
Right.
the inner workings of the wrestling business. And he uses Dave Meltzer's press pass to get in, which is so funny that Dave was just like, I'm just gonna see what happens if I give him the press pass. Let's let him in. Because Dave, I guess, was leaving and Brian was like trying to go in and he just goes, hey Dave, can I use your pass? And he was like, or your credentials? And he was like, yeah, sure, I don't care. And I love that Dave was just like, fuck it. Like, let's see what
Well,
happens.
they were friends at this point. So he's like, all
I
right.
I love it. And he basically just immediately goes up to Vince and JR and like is like buddy buddy and silly and over the top. And
Mm-hmm.
JR is like, I mean, he really sold it. And like Vince was really intrigued and JR already knew about the Brian Pillman of it all.
Right.
And all the pieces start coming together. But then he is still in negotiations between WCW and WWE, like literally in the middle of negotiations. According to his sister, he wanted to stay at WCW, just wanted more money.
Yeah, because of the like the way WCW was structured, they guaranteed contracts, and at the
Right.
time, WC or WWEF didn't. I believe the first couple were Bret Hart and Pillman, or I think Pillman might have been the first one. I'm not sure.
Oh,
He
wow.
was one of the first people to get a guaranteed contract in WWF.
Wow. That's crazy. But he, it's so funny because everyone's saying, like, oh, he kept saying he was like, I need to make more money. I need to make more money. I need to make more money for my kids. And then he randomly buys like a super crazy souped up Humvee,
Mm-hmm.
which I do remember was like a moment. Like everyone wanted a Humvee. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was a weird thing, but he buys it and wrecks it. And wrecks it really bad. And it's really interesting because later when they talk about the accident, he says that it was actually, they said he it was actually good he didn't wear his seatbelt because he was ejected from the car that like basically was a nothing by the end. And so even though he was ejected from the car and it was
It was
horrible, it
better
ended up,
case scenario than getting crushed in the car.
yes, which is insane and terrifying.
Right.
Um, so this is when the second episode comes in. So now we're in season 3, episode 2. So he gets into this terrible accident. Melanie gets to the hospital and she said she walked right past his room because he was so bandaged up she didn't even recognize him. He almost lost his foot. They had to put plates in his face.
Mm-hmm.
So terrible. And he thought his career was over. He was like crying, I messed up, I messed up, I messed up. Apparently he fell asleep at the wheel because he'd just been overworking. And the interviewer, this was really, really crazy, but the interviewer asked Melanie, was there a substance abuse problem at the time? And she goes, no, well, just some muscle relaxers and like a few pain pills. Diva, that's a substance abuse problem.
Right.
She goes, no, except for muscle relaxers, which are probably somas,
For sure.
and pain pills. So, yes, the answer is yes.
Correct.
Okay. I was just like, Girlina, like, what are we doing? But
And
uh,
maybe she's like thinking like comparatively to like later on,
yeah, that's
maybe,
maybe
and like,
true.
but it's like he's
The,
still on
the,
pills when he got in the accident. Like it's not like
uh, yeah. And also, it's like the substance abuse problem had to start somewhere. And
yeah.
if this was the beginning, it's still the beginning of the problem. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's
And
Apple. Yeah.
yeah, and also they made note of like he drove the way he lived, aka no rules. So like
No,
he
Fast and Furious. Driving
right,
across, yeah, medians, like,
right. Like
just doing crazy shit. Yeah. Um,
I like when they were just like describing all of his injuries, my notes take like a turn for like the illegible because like I get so like weak when like they go into like too many details. I'm like, oh my God,
oh
what are
my
they
God,
saying?
really?
Yeah, I was like, my hand was like useless. I was
Oh
like, what
my
is this?
God.
Because
That
it like took a second to like get back to like functioning.
that is so funny because I never expected you and Crystal, my roommate, are
Hmm.
I would never expect it from the two of you are like weird, not weirdly, but like squeamish.
Squeamish.
And
Yeah.
I am not. Like I
It's not
am
even like my thing is it's not like what gets me usually is like broken bones.
oh, bones
I
gross me out. They
right,
gross
and I
everybody out,
think
but
because they were describing like how his
his
foot was
ankle was
like
hanging off the floor
I was like
or
ooh like because I'm not like a bodily fluid doesn't like vomit doesn't bother me like
blood.
whatever doesn't bother me. It's the like broken bones of it all that like rocked my shit. Like they were talking about like reconstructing his face like screw like ugh crazy 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 crazy.
It's yeah, that stuff I don't enjoy, but it never makes me feel any. But I also, my mom and my sister are nurses, and they've told
Mm,
me like the craziest shit. So but maybe, but it, literally, I was like, wow. But I
right.
never feel like
Oh no, I was like, what?
that is fascinating. But people were so into the loose cannon
persona.
persona that most people didn't believe the car accident was real. And this is really, first of all, so insane. Really crazy. And I actually think this is kind of funny. They thought that he was gonna get facial reconstructive surgery to look like Shawn Michaels so he could come wrestle as the evil version of Shawn
I
Michaels.
know. I was like, what?
And at first I was like, okay, that's like voracious hearsay. Like that's so stupid.
That,
And
but
then they have the phone call, the interviewer asking him if he's coming back as evil Shawn Michaels. And I was like, no.
literally, like Pillman's like, he's just like, listen to that question, like,
Yeah,
and
he's like, do you
and
hear yourself?
that is why, like, things like that are why I call it the male soap opera, because only in soap operas does like an evil twin version
Diva.
of like a character like show up, and like we all just like accept it as like truth, and
That's
like,
truth.
you know what I mean? Like, so it's just like these are the reasons, because like you can apply the same logic like in like that universe to like where
General
like
Hospital.
right, where it's
Days of
like
Our Lives.
no, but at the same time, like in the same universe that like those things are happening, like the Undertaker exists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like at the same
Yes.
time,
Yes.
like we're like supposedly concerned that there's gonna be a like Shawn Michaels versus evil Shawn Michaels like fight. Like the Undertaker's out
Showdown.
here like, give me your souls. And you're like, okay. Like,
And
and
meanwhile, Undertaker does get basically an evil twin, sort
no,
of. Like
literally.
his evil brother
Yo,
who
for
was like
real.
burnt in the fire and reborn. Like,
Yo, so
come
crazy.
on,
The
girly.
phoenix of it all.
I swear I love it. So funny. But um so it sorry. Whoa. Where was I? Okay. So Dave Meltzer says Brian Pillman said, "Oh no, I'm not gonna be 100% back. The doctors told me I'll be totally fine." And Dave's like, "And I know for survey says no.
Hmm.
I know the doctors did not say that by any
And the
means.
lie detector says that was a lie.
That was a lie. Okay, so that was a lie. Um but it is very unfortunate because this was when he was right in the middle of negotiations.
Right.
And he is apparently like hiding himself, like not going out in public, like really playing down what his injuries were. And so Vince, being Vince, because he loves to be the one that wins, decides to sign Brian without
To a
him even
yeah.
being close to wrestling condition.
Three
So
years
a 3 year
guaranteed.
3 years guaranteed. And so WCW allegedly also offered him a contract, but they were, I'm going to say it, and I hate to say it, I feel like they were a little smarter with it. It was conditional. They had to renegotiate every 3 months pending his recovery. So, like, they were like, we're going to do a 3 months. We'll see how you're doing in 3 months. Like, to me, that actually makes sense, and I hate admitting that.
Well, because it is like he's like very seriously injured upon bringing him in. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not like he was already under contract and got injured. It's like they
You're,
as a from a company standpoint, it's like, am I really going to bring somebody in who might not be able to fulfill the job description?
yes. And so it kind of makes sense, like to
Right.
renegotiate after every 3 months and then maybe get to a place like if he did recover, like to solidify something more serious. I just feel like that's fair.
Hmm.
But either way, Brian joins WWE in 1996, as we know. And I literally wrote, I remember this in
Right.
caps. Because I was there and I love when this happens. The crutches, getting on the commentary,
Yeah, he
but
was
he
like
would,
the one of the main commentators for Shotgun
yes,
Saturday Night,
Shotgun Saturday Night, TBT.
which makes sense because that was like the ECW
Completely.
of, you know, of
Yes,
1996 and 7.
girl, put it back the way it was in the basement of the club. I know we'll
Put
never
that
go
thing
back,
back
but
where it came from, or so help
or so help
me.
me, swear. Love. But apparently Linda says he would literally unhook himself from his IV, go to work and wrestle or commentate or whatever he was doing, and then go home and like reattach it. And he was miserable. He was like very, very upset. And there's that, and it's really funny. Stone Cold like talks about, and I remember this too, where he gives Pillman like the beating of a fucking lifetime, like
Yeah.
beats the crap out of him. And he goes, and I really beat him up, like didn't hold. And he goes, and Stone Cold's like, and he took it like a man. And I was
Yeah.
like, girl, he was literally like busted.
Damaged goods,
Like
baby. Damaged
you
goods.
are taking a baseball bat to a car that's already in the junkyard, diva.
This
Like it's not going anywhere.
this was what this was like a he's literally a one-legged man in an ass kicking contest. Like there is no like there is no like there's no way he's gonna like okay.
Okay, girl. Congrats. Like I don't it was
It
really
was
I
crazy.
was just like
But
but
then he does explain it like
yes,
from a
yes.
character standpoint. He's like because of who my character was and who where I was trying to go with it, it like had to be that way.
It had
Like
to, and he says like Brian understood that and took it. And like
mm-hmm,
to me, a testament because also Stone Cold is kind of doing what he was doing. Like he could see like
mm-hmm.
the idea of the character because he already kind of did something in that same
Vein.
flavor.
In the same
Yes.
vein as like expect the unexpected. The only
Right.
things for sure is that nothing's for sure.
The only thing for sure is
That's
I'm gonna
Sting.
beat your
Yeah.
ass. Yeah, like period. Um, but this I did not know this. Jim Cornette says that he beat him so bad that Pillmanizing becomes a verb in the wrestling community. Pillmanizing a body part
Like
becomes like a
the
thing.
what it's like making it a like making a real injury part of a wrestling storyline is what like
Pillmanizing.
Pillmanizing.
Oh, fierce. Because I didn't. Okay, that
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
more
It's
sense to me.
taking a real injury and like working it or taking something real and like working it in so that it's like part
So
of the
it
story.
explains
So
why he
that
was out longer.
right.
Oh, guys, I
Right.
love learning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's even better than what I thought. That's great.
Yeah.
Um, then of course we go into the B&E,
The
which
B&E
the
guys.
B&E, Steve, I love. Okay,
We have a episode on that. You can find it in the archives,
in
but
the
we
archives
watched that episode. We discussed it at length.
at nauseum, ad
Right.
nauseum.
So
Um,
you can go back and hear our full thoughts on that one.
yes.
But yes, this segment is crazy.
Crazy. So they do the B&E. Obviously, the reaction was very, very negative, which we knew because they like tried to never speak of it ever again. It
No,
literally like
fully.
a
It became
year
Voldemort.
passed.
Like
Like, yeah, he must not be named, swear to God.
right.
Um, and someone goes like, yeah, I'm busting in there. And apparently none of them knew anything. The only thing they knew is that like Stone Cold was like allegedly gonna break into Brian Pillman's house and kind of left them in the dark, like open-ended what they wanted to do with it. So Stone Cold apparently like didn't really know about the gun that Brian Pillman had. Melanie didn't know that Stone Cold was actually gonna like bust open the window and break in with like a bat or something. Like
No,
they
he
were
like wraps the thing around and he like
oh yes.
he like
So
punches through and then like grabs and unlocks the door from the inside.
and she didn't know. So the screaming was like very
Real.
real. And then like again, Stone Cold didn't know there was gonna be like it's so crazy. Again, the blurring of the lines, but obviously it gets very negative feedback. Vince literally apologizes, which Dave Meltzer says I don't think Vince has ever apologized for anything in his life, so that was crazy.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so that happens. They move along. They reliquate Brian to commentating, and apparently he considers it like a death sentence to his career. He hates it. JR talks about how he tries to convince Brian that there's like a beautiful future in wrestling if he just kind of like releases the wrestling. Like if
Right,
he
the
just
having
like
to be in the ring.
in the ring. And Brian just loves being in the ring. And even though he's in horrible pain, continues to try and wrestle. And so, as the pipeline goes, he gets addicted to painkillers.
Yeah. Linda,
So,
his sister was like, I think it was a sister. Yeah. Says like there's one point where he's like, he told her that whenever he felt an ache or a pain, he would take a pill and he would just keep taking
yes,
pills until the pain went away. And you're like, oh,
bad,
bad.
real bad. Very upsetting. And he couldn't even walk through the airport, but was
Yeah.
taking bumps in the ring,
Right.
which is
Because his foot
insane.
was fused in a like position. Like
Which
he
is crazy. I would never have known that if they hadn't
right.
said it. So
Right.
insane. Like just fused
He
in this
fused
in the
so that he could like walk, but not well. Like he was not supposed to be like doing any of the shit he was doing.
and I remember them saying the doctors were like, "You're lucky to even still have your foot. Like just go home and rest on your
Enjoy,
laurels with that because you shouldn't even have a foot or be
right.
able to walk at all and you have
Hmm.
both." And he was like, "I'm gonna wrestle." So crazy. But uh apparently oh wait, sorry. I lost my place. Oh, okay. But again, like the loose cannon persona kind of inhibits people from wanting to help him because people are like, I can't tell like if he's actually in pain, if this is
Hmm.
real, if this is because he just really this character, it was both like a blessing and a curse. Like it went over so well that people, even his own like wrestling like coworkers or cohorts like didn't even know if they should be like
Hmm.
offering help because like JR was like it was weird because we were like is this like part of the gimmick? Is it not? Like it really again it blurred the lines even for the people he was closest to. Um and I guess he shows up at one point to Kim Wood's house and Kim was like he was messed up on pills. He was really messed up, didn't even know how he got to my house like and I do not tolerate that kind of stuff. My kids are in the house. He was going crazy and I kicked him out and I said like get the fuck out of my house. Don't ever come back here like this. Like I just whatever. And I think that's like the last time he ever sees him. Which is really crazy. I like it's one of those things where I am like you never know what you're gonna do in that moment. It's
Hmm.
like if you see someone who's like really messed up, obviously like it upsets you and you're like, why are you like this? What are you doing this for? Like blah blah blah. But it's like I don't know, like it's so hard to like find the line of like tough love and then also compassion.
Yeah, and it's also like like we don't have kids, so I can't imagine like
Oh,
what that would feel
totally.
like to be like I wouldn't necessarily want to expose I don't know how old they are in this, say, but like I wouldn't necessarily want them to see like especially if they're young, like someone fucked up. Like
Yes.
so
Yeah. So so either way, Kim Wood kicks him out, and I'm confident. I think that's the last time they ever see each other. But so now people are starting to notice it's getting bad. People start going to JR and saying like, I somebody needs to put a stop to this. This is really bad. Like he's getting out of control.
like he should not be doing this.
He should
Like
not be doing this. So JR says he's going to drug test him. And apparently, like, he's like, I'm going to tell them to drug test him. But even though it was like, quote unquote, random, Brian Pillman finds out that JR was the one that, like, asked for him to be drug tested, considers it a huge betrayal, like,
hmm.
accuses, like, Jim Cornette, I'm sorry, JR of like being a traitor and like
Hmm.
why
He's
are
like,
you
why would you
singling me out because like he's like everyone else is doing it which honestly is not
not know?
untrue
Right.
not no like he's like and everyone else is doing it and why am I not doing it and allegedly he only came back for what he was prescribed
Right.
but
But
he's
he
abusing
was
what he's
abusing.
prescribed.
Right.
And that is the whole point of like why they brought up the steroid trials. Cause like, yes, maybe you're being prescribed pain meds and somas and whatever, but it's obviously an abuse of the prescription. Like that is the point.
Right.
But either way, um, and so he stops, JR says he stops confiding in me. We stop having conversations and he really shuts me out. Then Brian misses Bad Blood. So the call time for wrestlers is 1 p.m. for a pay-per-view, and it's like 5 o'clock, and Brian is still not there. And he goes, and Jim Cornette's saying, some guys will roll in it too, like, from partying, whatever, but no one's ever been that late for a pay-per-view.
Well, yeah, because pay-per-view started like 7:38. Like,
Yeah, girl, where are you?
mhm.
So they can't get in touch with him, and I guess uh I think if yes, was it Jim that called?
Yeah,
No,
Jim Cornette does like a
Jim
safety check.
calls.
Yeah.
Does the yes. So Jim calls and the hotel manager, I guess, just goes, "Oh, he's dead." And he's like, what?"
Right.
Like they're like, "No, the police are here. The somebody is coming to like get his body literally right now." And Jim was like and he says, "I honestly thought it was a rib." I
Yeah.
thought it was, again, it's the loose cannon persona. Like, people legit thought he was like, oh, he's quote unquote dead and he's gonna come back to life and like
Make it
do
a
this,
story.
a
Yeah.
resurrection thing. And that was not the case. Brian had a heart attack in his sleep, some sort of cardiac episode in his sleep, and died, as we
Hmm.
know. And like nobody believes it. His son is like, I didn't believe it. Like literally, like we're all crying and hugging each other, and I keep looking, being like, okay, like
Where's
let's give
Dad?
it up. Like, ooh, you got me. Like, where is he?
Hmm.
Um, and then they get into the interview the literal day after, which we just discussed on
Yes.
last week's episode, or not last week's, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Um, and so Melanie did consent to do it. Like Vince reached out and she did consent to do it, obviously, because they came to her house. But
Hmm.
she said she specifically asked Vince not to ask about drug use. And she goes, and of course, that's the first question he asks me.
Yeah.
Because she was like, we still
We
didn't
didn't
even
know.
know,
Right.
yes, what happened. And again, it's like, it's not her job to exonerate you from whatever like drug, like whatever things you may be worried
Trying to
about
fend off.
befalling you.
Yeah.
Yes. I to use again, we've said it on the episode and we don't have to go on and on about it because we really did rip Vince to shred about this on the episode. But I just feel like it was in such poor taste. And like Melanie, it's interesting because she doesn't really seem that affected, but like she doesn't seem like that upset that it happened.
Yeah. I feel like she was more like she, she was just like I was so like
Out of
in the
it.
shock of it that like I she's like I don't really remember it. And like I it was the next day. Like it
The
was
next day, I mean, she has no idea what's going to happen to
right.
her or her kids. So yeah, she was like, but I do remember specifically asking him not to ask about drugs, and it's the first question he asked.
Right.
So, and then I had to be put on the spot and whatever. So, really insane. Jim Cornette says I absolutely despise the grieving widow interview, just so in such poor taste. Um,
He's like I didn't think it belonged on a wrestling show. Like
yes. And he said, I thought he should have sent her a check for $100,000 and kept her ass off TV. And
and period. That's what we said. Because one
amen.
of the last questions he goes and asks is like, "Oh, like how are you going to support your kids?" And I like on the episode you hear me go, "How are you going to support her kids, Vince?" I was
Uh,
like, your employee died like
on your watch again.
on like not he was going to your show, babe. Like
I'm saying. Um, and it's really crazy. Yeah, so Melanie says I barely remember it. JR also says like I really thought it was like horrible. I didn't like it, made me feel uncomfortable. And the official cause of death is ruled heart disease. He had heart disease, he had some
hmm
sort of cardiac episode. Could it have been a result from, it was act like, I don't
yeah.
know the word, like not activated, but infl in something with the pain pills, like it could have like made it
Oh,
worse.
exacerbated.
Exacerbated. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Um,
And also like Linda mentions that like their father, Brian and her father, like died of a massive heart attack fairly
at like
young.
54.
So
Yeah.
he was pre like disposed to heart problems.
Yes.
So
Pre-existing conditions, most likely. But it's crazy. Linda talks about how they go to the funeral and she goes to the funeral and there's a camera crew at the funeral that apparently Melanie said, yes, please come film Brian's funeral. And
yeah,
Linda goes in and goes, yeah, no,
right.
get out. And she goes, and I kicked them out expeditiously. And they were like, well, no, Melanie said we could be here. And she goes, okay, well, I'm Linda. And I said, you can't be here. Bye.
Yeah,
And that's the doll and the diva, by the way.
right. That's
Like, are
crazy.
you also, I'm sorry. Why
Filming
would
a
you even,
funeral?
why would you even think to do that? Because Melanie consenting to it is bad enough, but you even thinking to do that is disgusting.
Right,
Filming at a funeral, die. I'm sorry.
right. That's
Give it
crazy.
up. That's gross.
Mm,
Gross.
gross. It's yeah, it's not I yeah. I don't know what your logic was besides more capitalizing on it, as if you hadn't
Ew.
already done enough, quite frankly. Gross behavior.
Really, really nasty work. Nasty work. Did not like. Um, Melanie says there were no wrestlers at the funeral. No one showed up except Vince and JR, which I thought was interesting. And JR says, and I will say, I feel like JR is like always the token funeral attendee. Like he always is the one that ends up going, no matter who else goes.
He was very much at this point like it's like Vince, like Pat, JR is like somewhere like down the line.
Like,
JR was kind of like I read his like books, but he ends up being kind of like a punching bag for Vince, like the I don't really feel like doing this job. Oh, well, give it to
mm,
JR. Like the
hmm
hard conversations, the firing people, the like those kinds of things, that all fell on
yeah.
JR. That was
Oh,
yeah.
poor
And so
man.
I'm sure that
The attendant, the showing face at the funeral job
right.
fell to him. Yeah. And he said, it just made me feel ill, like we should not be burying a man that's this young. And they said, Melanie said, "Oh, have the kids, all right, kids, like say goodbye to daddy," because they were so young. They like barely even understood like
Like
what
they
was
yeah.
happening, of course. And so there was I think it's JR that talks about this moment where like they're like, okay, like
I
what?
think it was Cornette.
Oh, it was Jim Cornette. Okay, I'm sorry. I was like,
No,
I
no,
don't
you're
feel
good.
like I'm sure, but he says, okay, she's like, okay, kids, like go say goodbye to daddy, and like all the kids like run up to the casket and like kiss him goodbye and then like leave. And it
Hmm.
and it was just it's just harrowing. Then Danny says, I never had a problem with Melanie until my father passed, and then it was like her true character revealed itself.
Right.
And she says that Melanie got all of these royalties and money from Brian's passing, and none of the kids ever saw a dime of it. At least she says she didn't. She goes,
Right.
I literally got nothing of it. And their living situation declined extremely rapidly. A lot of alcohol and drugs. Melanie remarries some man who is not named, who is incredibly abusive. Like
Especially to Brian Jr.
I was gonna say Brian Jr. had a really like his story really upset me. Like,
Yeah.
talking about how like it was like he said something, oh, I just gotta chill. Oh my God. Where he's like, it's like my stepfather could figure out even any tiny thing I enjoyed and destroy it.
Right.
Like even something as simple as like my GameCube. Suddenly he's ripping my GameCube out of the wall or out of the outlet and smashing it against the wall. Like
Right.
he was like
And
any little thing I found joy
and
in.
the thing like that, I was like it was so much like vitriol from like the stepdad to like Brian that like even the dogs like
Oh yeah,
picked up.
girl, disgusting.
Yeah, Brian was talking
Weird.
about like how he would get like when he was like being punished or whatever, he would be like locked in his room and he had these like giant dogs that would essentially like guard him like in his room. And he said that like his stepfather was so abusive towards him that like the dogs like picked up on that like energy
Energy.
and like thought like Brian was like a threat and like would just be very hostile towards him. And like that's
Oh.
you imagine like two giant dogs that hate you in your own home?
Oh, girl. That is terrifying. That is terrifying, especially because like you can't, and this sounds stupid, but it's not like I can be like, no, no, you misunderstand. Like to the dog. It's a
Right.
dog. Like I love dogs, but like they just like feel what
Yeah,
they're trained
well,
to feel. Like I don't
right.
know. It's just very it was
They
it's just
they
it's
they
such a
take their cue
disturbing.
from the alpha, whoever they're like, and
Yes.
that's if that's what the energy that's being given, like they're just gonna follow suit because that's all they know. That's how they function.
It's so disturbing. Like that's a really because it was already horrible and like so upsetting, and then that element is like like even the animals are turning on me. It's like what do you even as a child, like how do you even like deal. I just it's
Hmm.
crazy. I just wrote like these poor kids. Like, and the fact that they seem so like okay now. Like
Hmm.
Brittany at her mother literally killed herself, and then her father dies alone in his
Incredibly young. Yeah.
bed, very young, and she already had a very horrible relationship with Melanie before this. Then the everything that happened afterwards, like, and Brittany talks about how she goes, it's crazy how you go from like, you're comfortable to suddenly you have no idea where your next meal is coming from, who it's coming from, like what's happening. Like your living
Hmm.
situation is like tenuous at best. Like
Yeah, things are getting turned off. Like there's no power, there's no heat. There,
there's
like
no
it's just
it's scary. And like, Melanie did talk about, she would be like drunk, passed out on the floor with like just a bottle next to her. Meanwhile, there's no power and the kids are freezing. And she's
right.
like, it was a horrible situation. And I am assuming, though they don't discuss it, like she must be in some sort of like air, like sobriety program or something because she seems like she's on the other side of it because now she was talking about how she's working on like forgiveness from her children and that's all she wants,
Hmm.
which I don't know if there is like like she's on the path to sobriety kind of element there. I would assume, but I do not know.
Right.
But all I know is Aunt Linda is that girl and
Hmm.
saves the day. And I I literally wrote I'm crying. I was sobbing on my couch watching this. Like the children, basically
Hmm.
Aunt Linda was like, I didn't want them to be separated like they needed each other. And so I would have them first it was like twice a month. They would come to my house and we would all get together and whatever. And then I think she kind of just like ended
She
up
bought
they're
a
just
house like so that they had a place to like go to, and like there is I and like there's like one of these in like my family where it's like if they don't like if they like they're the one that like makes the active effort to like do the family things, and
yeah.
like because like it's so easy to be like shoot off in a bunch of different directions, and especially for these kids who have had no shortage of trauma and all of the reason to just avoid you know seeing the reminders of their trauma,
Yeah.
like to have a safe space to like come back to that is positive, um is crazy. It's just like
Oh my God.
it's like that is the commitment to doing that like for your family is incredible. And like not for not like she doesn't have to do any of this.
No, I was literally thinking that. Like, and you can tell there's no pretense about why. She just like,
What do you
she's
mean? She's like, what
so,
do you mean? These are my
she's
family.
so
Like,
sincere about it. And
mm-hmm,
we were kind of talking about this before, like before we started recording, is like a safe place to land is literally priceless.
mm-hmm.
Literally priceless. I cannot underemphasize like what that means to people. Like
Right.
to have just a safe place to land and be and just experience who, just who you are in that moment, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Right.
And there's this really touching moment where like they're recording, like Linda's recording and you hear Brian Jr. like scream upstairs and
Mm.
she starts laughing. She goes, oh, she goes, there's a spider in the tub upstairs. She goes, I can't kill him. I love a spider, but oh my God, he is so scared of spiders. And I just knew, like, I was bawling
Yeah.
because it's just that moment, that tender moment of
It's
like,
like
she
she
knows
knows
them
them.
so
Yeah.
well. Oh my God.
She
I was,
knows them.
and
Like
she
she
knew just
knows them.
from his one little scream upstairs. She goes, oh, he saw that spider.
Yeah.
It's like when like a baby cries and the parents like he's tired,
Right.
not hungry, not whatever. Like they know the cry. I was like,
Right.
she knows these kids. I was sobbing. I was like,
Right.
oh, damn it, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
God bless. And there's a beautiful moment where like they're all sitting together and they're talking about like Linda literally saved their lives and they don't know that what they would do without her.
Oh yeah, Brittany especially, I feel like
Oh,
because like the lack of like both parents, where it's like like Danny still has her
her
mom,
mom.
Brian still has his mom, regardless of, he talked about like
Yes.
mending that relationship, and boy, do I relate to that one. But like, yes.
Yes, girl, Brian.
So like, there's that, but it's like for her, it's like she was orphaned. Like she was, and like for her, it's like Linda really stepped into that role. And she was probably more willing to like, not like they weren't willing to accept it, but she was definitely more willing to be like the recipient of that because she
Yes.
needed it probably
She
the
needed
most.
it.
Like,
God damn.
so like, yeah, so when she's like, yeah, like I don't know what I would do. Like, cause for like for her, it'd be like losing another parent, you know?
Oh, forget it, please. I really feel for them so much.
Hmm.
I'm so grateful for Linda. Like what a
Right,
beautiful person. And again, no pretense. She wasn't like, I'm gonna be their mom now. She was like, I'm just gonna like they're gonna come
right.
here and we're gonna hang. Like, it just
Hmm.
it's crazy. So, like you said, Brian Jr. talks about how he has rekindled his relationship with Melanie after years of not having a relationship. And if I were to guess, I would say Brian Jr. has been in therapy. He has this like language of he's faced the demons and
Hmm.
is facing the demons and is like speaking in a language of like I needed to forgive in order to like make peace with things that were inside of me. And
Right.
like I just feel like with all of the tumultuous things that happened in his life, like to get to that place, I'm like it seems like my good brother in Christ went to therapy and
Right.
God bless the man. I mean,
No,
thank
honestly.
you. Thank you. And honestly, it could have gone the way of Jonah Hill and guess what it didn't, Diva. Like
Right.
Brian Jr. and it just said getting to that place of forgiveness, healing the things within him helped him like become whole. It really helped. He goes, it this is how I felt like I knew he went to therapy because he was like healing my relationship with my mother. It made me better in my work life, my relationships with women because I'd been like toxic with women. Like it helped me with my relation, like be a better partner, be a better.
Right.
I was like, and I know that's right, Brian. Um, but it ends with them talking about how Brian follows in his father's footsteps and becomes a wrestler. And it kind of came out of the blue. Like he woke up one day and was like, this is actually what I want to do. His,
Well, it was the belt that he said it started for the phone call
oh,
from Steve Austin. So
from
Steve
Stone
Austin,
Cold.
I guess, was going through his like stuff and found this old weightlifting belt from when um Brian and him were partners. And again, Steve's not like one to hold on to a lot of things. He calls up Brian Jr. and is like, "Hey, like I have this thing that's your father's. I want to send it to you." And so from there, Brian takes it and like kind of
As a
like takes it as a
sign.
sign to be like, "Okay, I like I want to like pay homage to my father. I want to do this. Like this is this is what I'm gonna do." And like the thing that's like crazy is like his whole like his family like because they knew him growing up and they like he like self-described. He's like, I was like a chubby kid playing video games in my room. Like I was not an athlete. Like I
I love
and
that.
he goes into it like he's like, I was not athletic. I didn't have anybody to teach me those things. I like so it's that it really like threw everybody for like a curveball when I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a wrestler now. And they were like, you all you
Yeah,
do is
okay.
play video games.
Yeah.
But if and Jim Ross says this like really, really like he says that he talks to Brian Jr. about this a lot. He's like, there are so many wonderful traits about your father that I hope you acquire. And then there are some like not so much. He's like, and he says it's so like like eloquent. He's like, I hope you take his intelligence, his tenacity, like his like work ethic, like all those things. Great. Um, but he also, Brian Pillman is a like a story of like there's a warning there, and
Yes.
it's like you can push yourself too far. Like there is a line, and like um your body, your mind, your spirit can only take so much. And there are dangers to pushing yourself well past that.
Yes.
And so like I like that Jim Ross um kind of like has those conversations, like ongoing conversations, because
Yes.
it's like how full circle that must be for Jim, like in a way,
Of
for
course.
having like brought Brian like into
Oh,
WCW
yeah.
and like, basically followed most of his career because he was in WCW when Brian was, he was in WWF when Brian was like, um, and to be able to kind of like go back and do that for his kid is probably, a nice feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure. And to be so honest too, like the
Right.
transparency of like, listen, like your dad was not a saint. We know that. You don't have to be a saint, but you can be better.
Right.
I think that's important. Like I
Hmm.
really do. It just again, we talked about this before too, like just honesty and just going there with somebody like
Right.
and I just think that's important. And so he's in wrestling. He's actually incredible at it. Like he's very
Yeah, he's
good.
doing pretty well for himself.
And
Um,
he was in the Varsity Blondes
yes, in AEW they had like a kind of like an homage tag
instead of the
team.
Hollywood Blondes. They were the
Yes.
Varsity Blondes, and I think that's fun. Instead of doing exactly the same thing, to do something a little different, but it's got that same tone.
Like a
I just think
yeah, a
that's
spin.
fun.
And now he is in the WWE. He's in NXT.
Fierce.
He's wrestling under the name Lexus King. It's like a character. But he's like this like arrogant, like he's got like really like crazy facial hair right now and like a mullet.
Mm.
He looks crazy. But it's all good fun. He actually just won this like Heritage Cup thing, which is like a tournament. But he's doing well for himself. And like
I I
I
wonder. Oh,
I
sorry.
love
Go
it.
ahead.
No, 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 you're good.
I wonder if we'll have that moment of like a Cody Rhodes moment where it's like, Cody Rhodes kind of did like a character for a while and like things were like because I wonder if he'll like want to be Brian Pillman, like as like have that name. Or if
Mm,
do you know what I mean? Like where Cody Rhodes was like, I'm just Cody Rhodes. Like that's just who
right.
I am, whatever. And it was like the hero's journey to get there.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he'll have that moment where it's like, nah, I just want to be Brian Pillman. I'm so
Right.
curious to see like what happens with
That
him.
turns out, yeah, and I'm interested to see if maybe WWE is steering him away from using the name just in that make don't rely on it kind of thing.
Yeah, that
But
could
it's
be
also
true.
like, but they don't shy away from it with like Dominic Mysterio and
Right.
like so it's like I don't know and like Cody Rhodes like also but Cody Rhodes also had to go through this whole like Stardust whatever thing
Yes.
before he got to be the American Nightmare. So it's like
It it kind of gives, and I know I'm being drama, but it kind of gives like Aragorn, where like he doesn't want to be
right, right,
like,
right.
and then so he's like Strider
No,
and
I'm literally just waiting for somebody to be like release this ranger from the north like
about
become who
be
you were
whoop.
meant to be.
No, yes, like reforge the sword, diva. Like
That's what I'm saying. Oh, that's
like
crazy.
it kind of gives that because when I look at Cody Rhodes, like when we were talking about Cody Rhodes, that's kind of what it gave me. It's like pick up the mantle, like it's
Hmm.
time. It is time.
Right.
Finish the story.
Love that.
Um. So yeah, I don't know. I'm so curious. I love this for him. I love the children. Let me tell you. God
Hmm.
bless. All my best. Linda, beautiful. Kim Woods. God bless. I
Amazing.
it's just a beautiful thing when I'm happy that they're on
Doing
a
all
journey.
right.
Yes,
Right.
thank you. I didn't know how to say that without sounding like a douche, but I like
No, I'm happy they're
all,
doing all right. Like I'm
happy
good.
you're doing all right. So much love. But this has been another edition of the Nooner Wrestling Podcast After Dark. I guess we'll let you know where we're at next week when it comes to we're all learning at the same time. So we're
A
all transitioning at the
Amen.
same time. But we love you all. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.